welcome to video 4 of Harness Racing Australia's Retraining the Standardbred Project. I'm Kathleen Mullen, this is Buck. We've gone through our first 3 videos now. We've done our groundwork and backing. We've done our basic aids, sort of in the walk and trot. And in video 3 we introduced the canter. So we were just starting to establish canter and establish the aids and get them started on that. So in video 4 we're going to work towards refining the picture a little bit. We're going to start to get him in walk, trot and canter to establish a little bit of a frame, start to make sure our flexion's really consistent, make sure we've got a little bit of rhythm to all of our paces and we're working in a nice even tempo. All of those things that are, whether you're doing showing or dressage, all of those things from a flat work perspective are really important to making sure that you've got the best possible picture going forward. As always, as we work through these videos, we're getting a little bit closer to Buck's actual level of education. So at this point in time, this is about where Buck is in terms of refining the picture. He's got walk, trot and canter now reasonably well established, but you know, we are still in that position of refining the aids and working through all of the different things that make a horse go from good to great. So follow along, make sure you've watched the first 3 videos, I can't stress that enough. Building a house, strong foundations first. You're not going to go and start cantering tomorrow, have them in a perfect frame and have them sitting up and working over the back. If you do, you're a better man than I am. So let's get going and having a look at refining the picture a little bit. Hopefully Buck can help show us some things that are wrong and show us some things that are right and how to overcome when things aren't quite going his way. Good boy. So starting off in the walk, like always, establishing good habits and good aids in the walk is really critical to getting your aids happening correctly in the other paces. Good boy. So we want him in a nice marching 4-beat walk. We don't want him ambling and starting to look a little bit pacey. And what we want to do is just squeeze him up with our legs and just gently moving his neck slightly. With Buck and with a lot of established racehorses, they do tend to have a very fixed head position. And a very fixed, almost tight and locked jaw. And what you want to do is get them to start chewing on the bit a little bit more and softening. You still want them to take your contact and sit up into the bridle. That's one really positive thing that I found with re-educating standardbreds. I've re-educated a number of standardbreds and thoroughbreds, and I find the standies do take the contact a little bit better, whether that's from their time in the card or whether that's wearing a head check. They do seem, I haven't had many that have been afraid of the contact, so to speak. So you're normally working in the opposite direction where you're not necessarily pushing them to take a contact, but you're actually working to soften that contact, make it a little bit more elastic in your hand, a little bit more pliable. Now when you're doing this, you want to maintain that 4-beat walk. Get them marching forward. You don't want to lose the rhythm and the tempo of the walk, but just be certain that you're not putting on the accelerator and the brake at the same time, or you're going to cause yourself some issues later on when the horse is a little bit conflicted about what you're asking. You would have spent a little bit of time in video 1 and video 2 establishing really nice clean aids. You don't necessarily want to muddy those up by dragging on their mouth to soften them and kicking at the same time. You're going to end up in a little bit of strife doing that. So what I'm doing with Buck, like I said, is I'm almost just closing my ring finger in a bit of a rhythmic type fashion, just getting him to soften his jaw slightly. When he does that, the moment that he does that, you need to cease fiddling. There's nothing worse to watch than a rider that's constantly fiddling with a horse's head. And there's probably nothing more annoying as a horse to have a rider that's constantly fiddling with you. So again, it's that whole putting on the aids, pressure release concept of I'm going to just gently hassle you until you're where I want you to be. then I'm going to stop until you move from where I wanted you to be. So for those first few rides and those first few laps, when you do that, they may only stay where you've placed them for a few strides before you've got to ask them again. So don't let them completely drop and lock back onto the contact. As soon as you feel them start to draw onto the contact and tighten their jaw, start fiddling again. Buck's now marching pretty well forward. He softened his jaw slightly. I can see that he's carrying himself in a fairly nice frame. You want to get that feeling of the front of the saddle almost lifting up in front of you, where you know that he's sitting into the bridle and he's soft through the shoulders and loose through the shoulders, able to lift. And then what we can do is actually add a little bit of the lateral work in there. Pick a line and start to put your outside leg on. Good boy. Couple strides at a time, then let them go forward. Come on. Buck has a real tendency to want to just walk absolutely sideways. You do want him to go forward and sideways at the same time, with that hind leg crossing over. The lateral work, even if I could talk, is a really important part of re-educating a standie in particular. Come on. Because as I've mentioned in the first couple of videos, they spend their life between a set of shafts, and the front legs lead the hind legs unequivocally. There is no way that you can actually really deviate from the line that your front legs and your shoulders have set. So this being able to move in a sideways direction is actually a bit of a novelty for the standies. So again, we're going to go back the other way. He's a little bit better this way, but again, he wants to go more sideways than forward. We want a nice even forward and sideways stride. We want that hind leg coming underneath. We don't want it leading the shoulders. We don't want it dragging behind the shoulders either. Good boy. But this lateral work, apart from helping them in terms of understanding that their front and hind legs can do different stuff than straight lines, is also really critical, as I mentioned in video 3 with the canter work, where you're trying to get that horse to come off of this inside shoulder and stop counter flexing. The fact that you've established for them to move away from a leg aid is super important in being able to then move that across into your canter work and say, hey, come on, get off there. I need you to flex properly. Good boy. So we've added a little bit of lateral work in our walk. We've got our transitions from a walk to a halt pretty clean. That was ugly. Let's try again. As I said, we're now about where Buck is. Each of our videos as we've filmed, has been sort of slightly behind where Buck is in terms of his re-education, but now we're at a point where this is about where he's at, and the refining the picture process is a bit of an endless one. It doesn't actually really ever stop. That was a better transition. Stay there. So Buck wanting to rein back means I've just got to keep my legs on in this halt to keep him still. All right. Good boy. I know. So refining the picture, I mean, we're never finished in terms of re-educating a horse or educating a horse if they haven't come off the track. Refining the picture goes on and on. But what we're going to do is begin that process and give you the tools to work towards getting to a point where you can go out to a show, do some low-level dressage, and really start to enjoy your horse. And for those that are capable and want to go further and go on, it gives you a nice balanced horse with a walk, trot and canter established that you should then be able to go to any dressage instructor or any show instructor and go further with the horse. They aren't aware that they're a standardbred and they can't do things. I think that's something that we place upon them. They're a standardbred and they can't do stuff. Once you've got them to this point of having walk, trot and canter established, you need to start to treat them like any other horse. and really see how far they can go within their own physical and mental limitations without getting hung up on the fact, oh, he's a standardbred, he can't do stuff. He doesn't know that. Don't tell him. Good boy. So we've got that marching walk, we've got all the other bits and pieces, so let's go and have a little bit of a trot now. Always, at this point in time, we are now looking for correct flexion. At the start, I was happy for them to just go straight and not counterflex. But now at this point in time, I am looking for them to corner and go around the circle in a nice soft bend through their whole body. I don't want just their neck bent with their body still traveling straight behind. I do want a nice soft bend through the entire body that I establish by using my inside leg to push him out and around and up into my outside rein. It's a reasonably classical way of going about it. It's riding them from the inside leg to the outside hand. So that outside contact, that outside rein is nice and steady. It's elastic, but it's quite strong because he does like a little bit of balance and a little bit of help at this point. And that's just maintaining him on the track and maintaining his rhythm where I want him to go. Good boy. Good boy, Bucky. And again, if he is starting to cross his jaw, get a little bit strong, I'm just going to move those two ring fingers. You'll notice I'm not giving away any contact. I'm not doing this. I have got contact with his mouth at all times. It's a little bit more like a bicycle, I guess, with handles. You're just turning them, but the other is moving in the opposite direction the same amount. Good boy. We'll come through and we'll change the rein. Changing rein, really critical for the standies. This is where you're going to get your motorbike corners. I use my crop if I have to, just placed on the shoulder. Good boy. To keep him out and around and keep him flexed correctly to the inside. I click him up every now and then just when I feel like he's beginning to lose his rhythm and his tempo. Good boy. Good boy. So the right rein's a bit trickier for Buck. And at this point in time, he's super keen to show off his canter work. So I've got to work extra hard at this point to get him to a point where he's trotting rhythmically and he's not thinking about canter all the time. I can feel him, you may or may not be able to see him, sort of half asking, canter, canter now, canter. And that's something you've got to be prepared for. Good boy. Ooh. Golly, that was a little bit sharp. Is the fact that when you're working on one or two things, particularly in this refining phase of your work, is you've got to be prepared that the wheels are going to fall off one thing while you work on another, and that's fine. At one point, Buck's left canter really improved fantastically. His right canter got on a plane and left. It was so embarrassed. And so that was fine. It came back in the end. So just don't get disheartened if while you're working on something like, you know, picking him up into a little bit of a frame, if the quality of his trot deteriorates slightly for a week or two, or his canter quality deteriorates. That's quite normal because you're adding an extra level of complexity to what he's learning, and like anything, that's tricky. So that's probably some of the best advice that I'll give you throughout this series is be prepared for one rein or one particular element of his work to improve vastly and have something else completely fall apart. And that's true with any breed of horse, I think. You know, that's The same, you'll get Grand Prix dressage horses that can't do their one-time changes. And suddenly they nail the one-times and the twos are completely wrecked. It's just learning. It's learning theory, and that's just the same for horses and humans, I think. So be prepared for stuff to break. Don't worry though, it'll come back. It's in there. Good boy. So we're going to work on this trot again. We're trying to just work that frame a little bit, getting him trotting in a nice even rhythm and tempo. Ideally without too much interference from yourself. You really need him to go into cruise control. We talk about making it look effortless. Well, it should be less effort. You shouldn't have to be kicking every stride and flapping and bouncing to get him to keep trotting. And neither should you be hanging out the back of the saddle, trying to stop him from trotting a track record mile rate. So getting the horse to, good boy, to go at cruise control, at the rhythm, speed, tempo, whatever you want to call it, that you've asked for, is really critical. With Buck, he's a little bit slow, but I don't want to nag every stride. I'd rather give him one or two stronger kicks and have him travel forward and try and maintain that. I need a reaction out of it. When I tap him, he has to go. And the problem with slower horses is it's very easy to get into the habit of nagging them every stride, tapping away every single stride, and the horse begins to habituate to that. It's annoying at first, but he knows you're not really serious, so he ignores you. Whereas now I've got Buck with a couple of bigger kicks, really sitting up now into the bridle, coming through, traveling. Good boy. And once you're confident with having established a nice tempo, having him sitting into the bridle, you begin to add 2 levels of complexity. The first is simply just changing rein and just working on figure of eights and serpentines, depending on the size and shape of the area that you have to work in. Changing direction for a standie is a real novelty. So you see Buck wants to lean in this direction, and I'm using my inside leg and a little bit of my inside hand just raised slightly to just get him off of that rein and get him flexing correctly. It's very easy, and it's a big, strong habit for them to want to counterflex. So simply coming through and changing direction is actually a little bit trickier than you would think. Going downhill and changing direction is particularly hard for him. I use my crop on that shoulder. Good boy. To just make sure I've got the flexion happening. Once you're happy enough with figure of eight, you can start to do some 3-loop serpentines, getting that flexion changing and trying to keep your rhythm and tempo throughout the changes of direction. Buck's being a little bit fiddly at the moment in the bridle, he's a bit fussy, so I just want to send him forward. I keep my contact fairly strong. He is wanting to dive down into the bridle a bit, so I really want to brace my core, sit up very tall, and have my hands a little bit higher if I need to. Good boy. Just to stop him from diving down like he was. And that's just because the serpentine's a little bit tricky, and that's his way of expressing, Mum, this is a bit hard. And they'll all have their own little foibles and ways of expressing that, you know, this is a little bit difficult. Good boy. So the next thing that we probably want to work towards it's adding some transitions within the gait. And that's simply just a few strides, a few strides, a little bit quicker, and a few strides, a little bit slower, and then quicker, and then slower. See how slow you can go at first. You're right, Bucky? At first you can make the changes quite subtle, and then you can start to make them a little bit more obvious. This is going to be preparation for your lengthened trot at a later stage, which we will start to introduce, but it just allows them to be a little bit more athletic and gymnastically capable. Good boy. Again, I'm still using that click from the very beginning stages in conjunction with obviously my leg, seat and rein aids. Good boy. We're going to change rein. We'll do a little bit of that transitions in and out of the trot, or sorry, in the trot I should say, between bigger and smaller trots. Again, Buck wants to counter flex around this corner, so I'm having to work a little bit harder with my inside leg and my inside rein to just keep him correctly flexed. Sometimes they can be a bit stubborn. It's a long-term habit. Buck raced for 8 years and counter flexing was more than okay then, so why shouldn't it be okay after 3 months of riding work? So you can see he starts to get a bit grumpy and a bit tense. You have two options here. Depending on your horse, you can work through it like I was doing before by just lifting the reins and trying to send him forward, or you can bring them back to a walk. If they are really super tense and they're getting cranky, just give them a moment to decompress, give them a little bit of a long rein. If they'll take the contact out. Good boy. Just let them have a moment. Like I said, you'll start to know your horse, and some of them can be worked through when they're a bit tense and a bit upset, and some of them just need a moment to walk and relax. Good boy. Buck's also finding it really hard because I'm talking while I'm riding, and I'm probably not the best multitasker that ever lived. So I don't think I'm riding as well as I should be, and Buck's calling me out on it. He's a bit mean. Good boy. All right, so we've got him a bit settled. Let's go back and try and have a look at doing a bit of this trot work and getting the transitions inside the trot and seeing how we can go. Like I said, sometimes the wheels are going to fall off. Some things will be great, some will be less than great. Good boy. Good boy. So what we're going to do, get him to open up a little bit. I need him to respond, so I give him another kick if he's being really silly. There we go. Good boy. And we've opened that trot out a little bit. We bring it back. See how slow you can get it. Slow trot, very difficult for a standing. You can see Buck's here struggling. But it's really good for them to learn. It may not be a trot that you use in the show or the dressage ring, but it helps them a lot to understand that they've got a little bit of play in their work, and they've got the ability, if you're, I don't know, in a crowded show ring or something, you've got to get around someone, the ability to slow them up and then push them forward again without them dropping into a pace or getting too upset. That's going to be very important. So having some gears is something you should definitely be trying to install at this stage now. Good boy. Good boy. Now opening him up around this corner is hard. 2 for a standy. Good boy. That's it. Bringing him back, seeing how slow that we can get that trot without losing it entirely. Good. Keep going. Keep going. Good boy. Good. Good. Got to talk him through. Good. Very good. Keep it going. And then opening it out. Leg on. And opening that trot work back out again. Good boy. So we've gone through doing some changes of rein, doing some serpentines, and then doing some transitions within the trot. You know, you should have quite a number of gears in the trot. There's not just regular trot and lengthened trot. But at this point, I'll settle for 3. Working trot, a little bit more collected, and a little bit of a lengthened stride. You know, as you go up through the grades, you can start to establish a medium, establish a lengthened, establish an extended. But for now, let's be happy with having at least 3 grades. Walk, trot, and canter. So what we'll do now is we'll have a look at canter, and again establishing some of the same theories that we worked on in the walk and the trot. We've got to work around Buck being grumpy, but that's okay. We all have bad days. Canter. Good boy. Good boy. So in video 3, we got the canter established, and we started to refine it by coming out of that 3-point sort of jumping position, sitting up a little bit, starting to ask them to sit on their hind legs a little bit more. Well, Bucky's busted everything here. And that, my dear friends, is how you fall out of canter into a pace. Not something I'm trying to teach you today. But Bucky is getting a little bit tired now. We've done a bit of filming and he's probably physically starting to give in. So we'll have another go. Canter. Good boy. See how we go. Good boy. Canter. Keep it going. It's very difficult for him to maintain canter on a straight, which is the same with most of the standies. So what we're going to do is actually ask him to open up the canter a little bit. Good boy. And come back slightly. And then open up. Good boy. And come back. So again, you're looking to try and get a little bit of gymnastic ability in that canter. Now when you're bringing them back, it's really critical you try and maintain the quality of the canter. You don't lose it when you bring them back. Sometimes actually bringing them on a smaller circle and really driving them forward can help here in steadying it and then sending him forward again. Good boy. And again, not losing the quality. Good boy. Good. Good. Good boy. Good boy. Look. Good boy. I know. Buck's getting a little bit tired now, but you'll see what I've meant about getting that canter work and starting to lengthen the strides and shorten the strides. Again, without losing the quality, that's the key. At any point, you still want to be able to maintain that 3-beat canter. And at first, the wheels will fall off and it'll be a little bit tricky. Good boy. But we're going to give him that nice walk break now. Walk him. Give him his head a little bit, particularly at this point where you are starting to ask them to come into a frame. That's using a whole new set of muscles. And they're ones that, like anything, you go to the gym and start to do a new exercise and you're using muscles that you're not used to using, they're going to fatigue really quickly. So giving him this opportunity to stretch out, stretch his frame out, is really critical, because he's trying hard, but sometimes the body is not quite caught up with the mind. Good boy. Good boy. Like I said, we've begun to refine the aids now, refine that picture. We've gone through walk, trot, canter. We've done some shapes, some small circles, some spirals, some serpentines. We've also worked on lengthening the stride and shortening the stride without losing your tempo too much. In walk, trot and canter, we've done a little bit of lateral work in the walk. You can begin to bring that into the trot at some point as well. Bucky, come on. But hopefully you've learnt a little bit in this video about trying to refine the picture. We've got a couple more videos coming up still. We may work on refining the picture that little bit further under saddle, but more so we'll be looking at refining the picture from a show ring perspective in terms of getting them ready for a show. And that's going to go through a lot of your conditioning and stuff, which, as you can see, Buck over the course of the videos has been clipped. His shape has changed dramatically as he's begun to develop his new musculature for riding instead of being driven. But we're going to go through the really fun, pretty stuff in terms of getting him ready for a show, plaiting, quarter marks, makeup, presentation in general in terms of your gear and your outfit as a rider. And then we're actually also going to go to a show as well too. And we're going to talk about show day, because that's definitely a place where the wheels can fall off. And I'm going to hopefully be able to give you some hints and tips and advice on managing yourself and your horse at the shows, and managing your nerves, managing any nerves that they may have, and getting that all to come together. But at the moment, we've refined the picture to a certain point today. Buck's cranky now, so I don't want to do a hell of a lot more. That's a really important thing with the horse. You need to be able to read them. And there's days where you can go for 20 minutes and the horse is cranky and he's had enough. And there'll be days where you go for an hour and a half and they're still ready and willing to learn. They are living, breathing animals. And Buck's making it really clear to me that he's tired and he's had enough for today. And for me to push through that, he's not going to learn anything, and we're going to end up in a fight, and we're going to end up in an argument, and neither of us are going to feel very good. So it really is about reading your horse. I say this in every video, but I will say it again. Don't try and go through what we've covered today in one session. In the beginning, just start off with the basic stuff and then work forwards. But we've done for video 4 now. Hopefully we'll see you in video 5. We're going to refine the picture and get ready to go to a show. Thanks for watching. See you later. Oh, we're done.